Hello everyone, Jonathan here with another What Is This Weapon and another Belgian oddity. You'll have seen a few on this series before, I'm sure. We do have a wealth of strange Belgian firearms for whatever reason. I think just the sheer proliferation of firearms from Belgium. So, perhaps the main point of interest is this ring trigger here, although arguably the thing going on up front. So this is a Hermann patent, so-called for Jean-Jacques Hermann, who was working from 1829 to 1855. Thank you to the always excellent littlegun.be website for that information. Now that's marked on here. I'll show you that now so I don't forget, mainly. So the stamp isn't great, but trust me when I tell you that it should say J.J. Hermann. And I think, weirdly, there's a D on the end of it. And then brevet underneath, which is the French for patent. So that's the maker. Well, relevant to that is the usual Liège proof mark, which on this is on the cylinder, and it's the pre-1894 version. So in 1894, the Liège Proof House added a crown to the top of this oval ELG mark. So you know that this is pre-1894, but you probably could have guessed it's percussion. It's a so-called transitional revolver, although just about all of those were invented after Colt patented the Patterson design in 1835 and 6. So they're not really transitional, they're patent avoiding revolvers, but that's less snappy, I guess. And you can in fact see the Colt heritage buried in this thing. I mean, apart from the pawl and the cylinder ratchet arrangement, which Colt didn't invent, but he did patent. I think we've covered that before, which is embodied here. We have this barrel assembly here, which is vaguely reminiscent of the Colt, but then this locking wedge here, well, locking wedge is the wrong term to use for this type of firearm, but it is a wedge that locks the barrel assembly onto the axis pin here. I might be able to, I can in fact pop that out. So just like on a Colt, pops out and is retained so you don't lose it. You can pop off your barrel assembly and we can possibly see, yeah, so what looked like faux rifling, because it does occasionally, sometimes these marks are for a spanner, for a key to remove a turn-off barrel, not the case with a revolver, obviously. Sometimes they're just sort of decorative, implying rifling, that might not necessarily be there, but there are shallow rifling grooves, which we might be able to pick up for you on camera. So it is rifled, that's going to increase its effectiveness, clearly. Although it is only 32 caliber-ish, 8mm, so not massively powerful. And of course the cylinder is not massively deep either. This bit on the back is just for the percussion nipples. So you've got, well, I suppose proportionate to the caliber, a fair bit of powder behind your bullet. But it's not a Desert Eagle, put it that way. And what you're left with is this great big long axis pin, the flappy hammer on the top, which we'll come back to momentarily, with a sighting groove in the top of it, like on a Colt, but no spur. There's no, this is what we now would call double action only, or what they called at the time, probably 1855, pretty close to, self-cocking. So you pull through on the trigger, hammer drops. I can show you that in a moment with a high-tech tool that I've improvised from some foam. And then in the face of the breech, you may just see, you should just see, the pawl or the hand popping out of the groove there, which actually shoves up the back of the cylinder, and there are those ratchet cuts.
Ratchet? A
ratchet. So this is all standard revolver stuff. So those are the tooth cuts, and the pawl pushes up and shoves the cylinder around for the next shot. And then the trigger's really weird, but we'll put it back together to explain that. Nice bluing on this, and decorative, really nice bit of decoration actually, in relief. Or rather, they've chiseled away, they've lowered a lot of the face of the cylinder, leaving us with this interlace design in the middle, band of interlace, and then the edges are, scalloped edges are left raised as well. All very nicely blued, decently high-grade walnut grips as well. The pommel, or the butt there, more correctly, is just shaped. It's not decorated, it's not strictly a skull crusher, but it is a raised platform that would certainly concentrate force if you did have to use this thing as a very small club, and it is a bit too small for that role. And then as we pop this back on, or after I pop this back on, trying not to lose the wedge, which despite me claiming that it's retained, is trying to leave the premises. Pop that back together. The thing I mentioned at the front that's of interest is this very cool rack and pinion rammer. So we grab this, well, first of all, we use the classic cutout there, which you find on the very earliest revolvers from the 1650s onwards, self-cocking revolvers, or sorry, not self-cocking, automatic rotating revolvers, where single action effectively, and it rotates the cylinder, that type of thing. We've covered that before. There's a cutout there for you to pour in a powder, your powder, press in a ball far enough to then rotate it. Oops, a little bit awkward, but so you push in a ball manually, get it started, rotate it around that way under the rammer, and then the magic can happen. You pull up on this nub here, and you can see it rack and pinioning its way down to that depth, or whichever depth. You would want to fill that with as much, the proper measure of powder for the size of ball to get the maximum charge in there, so the ball is sitting just inside the level of the face of the cylinder. But this gives you enough travel to really seat it deeply if you want to. And it is what it looks like. It's a concealed, we probably can just show it from the front, a concealed cog, if you want to call it that, rather than the rack and pinion, and the teeth on there, and they just intermesh, and it drags the rammer back. It's just quite a satisfying bit of mechanical technology. You will see versions of this on other revolvers, but it's not the common way to do it. I think it's safe to say. Clicks back into place. While we're there are a couple of mystery marks. If I can shed any light after this recording, I will, but I've already had a look and couldn't find anything. So we have a Crown GD, and then there's an even tinier mark, which on the face of it looks like a British view mark, but isn't. And it's so tiny, we're going to struggle to make that out. And I think it's a Y, not a V, under it. So I'll throw that up. A, in case we can answer it in a box, and B, if we can't, in case one of you can. So I think that, no, it's not quite all the markings, actually. Back on the front strap, we have a JCS, I believe it says, which is another one I failed initially to find an answer to, but fingers crossed, either we or you can crack that one. So several marks on there, the key one being Hermann, and reference to the patent and the standard proof mark. We'll come back to sights in a moment because I want to get to the trigger. So ring triggers, we've seen these on a number of firearms. A few months back now, earlier this year, there was a Forgotten Weapons video with a Tom Thumb, an American Tom Thumb revolver, tiny, tiny thing with a ring trigger that seemed too short of a pull, and on that one, too small of a ring as well, although historically people's hands were smaller. Typically, women's hands are smaller too, so there was speculation around that. But it had a spur on the front of the ring, and it was clearly designed for some users at least to pull on the front of the ring, not put their finger through the ring, which is the received wisdom on how these work. This one doesn't have the spur, so I wouldn't be too confident doing that. But there's a big problem if you don't. I can't get enough travel there with my hands, or with anyone else's, I guess, because you can't get enough pull back to the grip to actually release the hammer. So in case you're not following me, pulling that back raises the hammer, of course. The pull comes up and rotates the cylinder. Now it is slightly out of order, so part of the problem I'm having here is that. But the main problem is I have to really move my entire hand out of the way to get any chance of actually raising the hammer and dropping it in that full self-cocking pull. So I'll attempt to do that with my high-tech safety tool here, just to cushion the nipple, if I'm allowed to say that on the internet. By putting that under the hammer, I can have a go at properly pulling through on the trigger. Went a bit Matt Berry there, sorry.
This is the way we talk in Tucson, Arizona.
I have to move my middle finger out the way, and then I lose, put that in sideways, I lose all mechanical advantage and I just can't get it to go. So let's go middle finger and pull. There we go. So that is the very, very awkward position with my hand size and finger length that I had to go to get this thing to fire off. The grip isn't that tiny. It's basically a pocket pistol, so we'd expect it to be about that size. So it's a little bit of a puzzle, as with that Tom Thumb revolver, as to how this is meant to be. Well, that's less of a puzzle because it's shaped at the front for if you have long enough fingers to use the front of the ring. This one doesn't have that advantage, so it's kind of implied you have to stick your finger through the ring. Is it intended for a weird middle finger pull? Even that would be very difficult to pull off, as I think I've just shown. It's a real mystery. Pretty clear that this thing is not going to be the most effective, I think. If you have any thoughts, let me know. There is a safety built into this. If anyone spotted this bump here, that's what that is. So we'll do the awkward maneuver again and pull down on that little catch, let go, and a bit like the spring safety lever on an Adams, that then leaves the hammer proud of the nipple so it can't accidentally fire in some circumstances. I definitely wouldn't trust it for a drop straight onto the hammer. And the idea is, so you've loaded, rammed, you've capped all of your nipples using this handy groove in the lock, in fact, in the frame, sorry. Allows you to fit a cap to each nipple in turn as you rotate the cylinder. You've done all that. You then rest the hammer on that safety notch, and then you can either, in theory, well, the classic way to do it, as with the Adams, is to just pull on the trigger and it will just pull back away from the safety notch, and then when you let go, in theory, disengage. I won't test it. And then it's possible, we do it in an intermediate position, yes. So if you press that catch upwards, a little bit like a hold open on an AR or something, it will disengage the safety by disengaging the safety. You don't have to pull through on the trigger to release it. So moderately safe for a pistol of this era. That's all the quirky stuff out of the way. Otherwise, it has actually a really good front sight. So it's a great big silver, I think, bulbous front sight that'd be very quick and easy to pick up in most situations compared to your typical pistol sights, certainly. So you can just index off that, or you can use this also pretty good rear notch. Pretty decent sights for the period. Now, I mentioned a sighting groove in the hammer earlier. That's not, I mentioned the Colt. That was the wrong thing to say, because although it is analogous to the notch on the hammer of the Colt, on the Colt, that is your rear sight. On this one, it's not. So you sight in using the, well, it kind of is. You effectively have two rear sights. So you sight in with the hammer down using this one, and as you pull through on the trigger, which I won't do all the way, but it brings it far up enough to see. The hammer would otherwise obscure your real rear sight, so there's a notch to try and allow you to see down it. It's not ideal by any means. It's a bit of a compromise. And I'm actually not convinced. Yeah, that hammer actually does obscure most of the rear sight when it's at its maximum. So you can get a good sight picture until you can't. And then the hammer drops and the gun fires. A really interesting little creature, this one. Let us know what you think down in the comments. The caliber is not massively effective. 31, 32, 8mm. Not hugely destructive, but it's light and small enough to carry on you, but it's not a true pocket pistol for a vest pocket or a muff or a purse or whatever, because it's that long. It's kind of the size of a Patterson revolver, so it's not a true pocket pistol. It's more of a belt pistol. Hard to see what niche this is fitting, other than a cool object to own and maybe try to plink with, but that ring trigger is just so problematic. I think you would need to have just the right tiny hands for this thing. Thanks for watching as always, guys. Don't forget to do the usual YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, all that kind of thing, and check out our website, our social media channels. If you'd like to check out as well the History of Weapons and War app, where we've collaborated with a load of other weapon-related YouTubers who have some parallel content over there, please do that as well. And we have a bit more merch for you. So this is the gold, or a small rendition in badge format of the Iraqi gold AK that was in our recent Reloaded exhibition. So this has been immortalized further as both a badge / pin and as a key ring, and I believe they come as a set. So you might like to look into those. See also the baby Browning, which weirdly is bigger than this, but that's just how scale works. And you might find a few more things in the shop as well. Link should appear somewhere in this video. Failing that, there's also a link in the description. But whatever happens, we'll see you again here next week.